Kia ora koutou, and thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you for bringing us together. And I'm really feeling quite privileged to have the opportunity to speak and to be the first among, I'm sure, what is going to be a lineup of great speakers. In thinking through the topic, Sarah, women in leadership and future careers, I want to say I'm quite excited about some of the changes happening in New Zealand. And one of them is that in March of next year, 2020, New Zealand is, I think, going to make another world first. And that's because the University of Auckland has appointed a new Vice-Chancellor who's a woman. And that would mean at 4 out of the 8 New Zealand universities, we will have women vice-chancellors. And I'm not sure if there's any other country in the world where 50% of the universities are headed by women. So I find that very exciting. And I think it builds on a proud tradition in New Zealand. And on this occasion, I'm reminded that this is the year that we collectively have celebrated 125 years since the suffragette movement in New Zealand started here in Christchurch with Kate Shepherd, ensured that New Zealand made another world first country in the world where women had the full rights of voting. So it's been an extraordinary history, and so I'm very proud to be part of another historical milestone in 2020. And as I think back to being a Vice-Chancellor in my own journey, it's occurred to me that as I look around the world, huge strides have been made. There are more women Vice-Chancellors at universities across the world today than ever before. On company boards, there are growing numbers of women. And we see that in all spheres. But even with these changes, there are still significant challenges that women leaders and future leaders have to face and think about and confront and change. If I think about the world and where we are today, we are fast approaching the year 2030. And the year 2030 is significant for many countries who've signed up or are member countries in the UN system and have signed up for the Sustainable Development Goals. And those goals have clear targets, and I know since my coming to live here that the New Zealand government is taking these goals quite seriously with clear targets in mind. But the Sustainable Development Goals are really about a global program for change that recognizes, in order for us to move away from the old way of doing things into a future that promotes well-being and sustainability, we need to move away from notions of dominance, notions of material superiority, to thinking about new global values. These are global values of sustainability, diversity, and respect and honor for human rights. I want to quote somebody who I interviewed, who said to me the difference between a female and male leader is, to me, she said, the ability to walk in the shoes of the follower. Now, it doesn't matter what gender we identify with. I think that's important to think about as a leader, because it's about empathy. Do we have the ability to walk in other people's shoes, to see the world through the eyes of people who might be the construction worker, who might be the student, who might be the career advisor, but when we come to a situation, do we have that capacity? But what we find for women, and many women leaders as they move up organizational hierarchies, often find that when they get to these positions, they're in a minority. And so women then end up feeling that they bear or they have the burden of expectation. So the burden of expectation often comes that there's an expectation that once women get to a certain position, there are a whole lot of things that are going to change. And if we look at some of the well-known women leaders, when they don't meet that expectation, there's often huge disappointment about, and they find themselves caught in a particular situation. So what I think it's important to recognize is that it's not enough to have a woman vice-chancellor. You have to have a critical mass of diverse people to have a significant difference in an organization like a university. So yes, we have a group of pro-vice-chancellors. Out of the 5, only 1 is a man, the other are women. So it all sounds very good. We also have a woman chancellor. But what does worry me is that only 27% of our full professors are women at the University of Canterbury. Now, that is important because it suggests to me that for students, only 1 out of every 3 professors they see is likely to be a woman. And I will say that's just not good enough. So in our new strategy, we've got to look at it. Because all of us would like to see ourselves in the places where we are. You know, there's a person I can identify with. Or this place looks like it's where people like me can come and be comfortable and express ourselves. So I do think it's important that we think about leadership as vested in individuals, but leadership also at a collective level. And we need significant and meaningful diversity in order to make a difference. Now, the other issue that women who are CEOs or prime ministers struggle with are stereotypes. Most people, and this is proved by scientific evidence, when they imagine good leadership, and a lot of it is unconscious, it's not conscious, they imagine characteristics like assertiveness, a particular voice and tone of voice, a particular size, height, shape, and it is unconscious. And it's happened to me many times. I've walked into a place with a colleague, and we go and say, I am this person, that person, and the person at the reception will look at my taller male colleague and assume that's the Vice-Chancellor of the university. It's unconscious. The person on the other side doesn't intend to do it. So I don't really get upset and bang the desk, because I recognize that it's not always a conscious thing. But we have to talk about these stereotypes in order to shift them. So I was interested to listen to the media debate about perceptions of our current Prime Minister and how she's seen, because she has shifted significantly thoughts, conscious and unconscious, about what prime ministers not only look like, because she's not the first woman, as we know, what age they might be, whether they might have infants, whether they could be pregnant or not pregnant while they're prime ministers. And those are headlines that went around the world. First pregnant prime minister, and then there was a media debate globally. Is this, what does this mean? So it's often the responsibility of the first to face those stereotypes, to confront them. And my view is, even if you believe that Jacinda Ardern has not really done much for women, I will challenge that. because simply by being who she is, she has made a shift significantly, not only in New Zealand, but globally. Because one of the other issues we've got to struggle with is how we think about childcare and domestic labor. And many books were published, maybe they still are, a decade ago, that went on titles like The Superwoman. In fact, there was even something called the Superwoman Syndrome for a while. Magazine. Can you have it all? Are you familiar with that kind of thing? Well, of course you can. And you can have a baby and be the Prime Minister, provided your partner, the father of the or the other parent, also makes a contribution. Or you have a social network if you're a solo parent. It's entirely doable. But then society has to shift another stereotype about who's responsible for what. And unfortunately, some psychologists might have a different view, but popular psychology sometimes doesn't help. Because one of the things many women confront is a sense of guilt, that they're not doing enough for their children, or if something goes wrong, it's their fault. So when we think about ourselves, how we confront challenges, there are also things we've got to let go. So none of us has all the powers. We cannot take responsibility for every single thing that might happen to our child or teenager. And we've got to just let go of that notion. So we've got to think about ourselves. We've got to think about the stereotypes we confront. And finally, realizing all of this, I want to encourage everyone in the room to put their hands up when it comes to taking opportunities on a leadership journey. And one of the thoughts that's always inspired me is something that was said by one of the famous people from my birth country, South Africa. It was said by Nelson Mandela. There's no passion to be found in playing small. In settling for a life that is less than the one that you're capable of living. And there are too many stereotypes that suggest that women are not capable of the full scope of leadership. And we actually are. So that's my challenge in conclusion, to recognize that unless we try, we won't know if we like that journey or we won't like that journey, if we're successful or not successful. So let's all try. Thank you.